breaking the surface or the gentle touch of a summer breeze. The air smelled of wet grass and wildflowers, carrying with it the earthy scent of the surrounding forest. On the shore, tall reeds swayed lazily, their thin stems bending gracefully as though dancing to an unseen rhythm. The sky was a canvas of oranges, pinks, and purples, streaked with the first hints of approaching night. Birds called to one another from the treetops, their songs weaving a delicate melody that echoed across the calm expanse of water. By the edge of the lake knelt a woman, her skin bronzed from countless days under the sun and her hair dark and braided with strands of colorful beads that caught the light. She wore the traditional attire of her Apache heritage, soft leather garments adorned with intricate patterns, feathers, and small charms that jingled faintly whenever she moved. Her hands worked deftly, scrubbing a small bundle of personal items with care, each motion precise and deliberate, as if every object held a memory worth preserving. She occasionally paused, dipping her fingers into the cool water and letting it run through her hands, feeling the chill seep into her bones and awaken her senses. Her eyes, dark and observant, scanned the lake and the surrounding trees with quiet vigilance. Though she knelt in apparent tranquility, her posture was taut, ready for any sudden movement. There was a tension in the way she held herself, a subtle awareness that the world around her was beautiful but also unpredictable. The distant hills seemed peaceful, yet she knew that danger could come from the horizon at any moment. The wind rustled the leaves, carrying whispers of the wild that reminded her of the delicate balance between serenity and threat. The water lapped softly against the shoreline, rhythmically and insistently, creating a soothing backdrop that seemed to slow time itself. Small stones glimmered beneath the shallow water, smooth and worn by countless seasons. Dragonflies skimmed the surface, their iridescent wings catching the last rays of sunlight. A gentle mist began to rise from the lake, curling and twisting above the surface, blurring the line between water and air. The woman's reflection shimmered in this mist, a fleeting ghost of herself intertwined with the liquid mirror, as if the lake itself were watching her with quiet interest. She reached into the bundle and carefully lifted out a small, worn pouch, running her fingers over its surface as though feeling the stories woven into its threads. Inside were items of both necessity and sentiment, a piece of carved wood, a feather tied with sinew, a small polished stone that caught the light like a drop of captured sunlight. Each object seemed alive with history, and she treated them with reverence, washing away the dirt and the sweat of her travels. The act was meditative, grounding her to the present moment even as her mind wandered to distant memories and the life she had led in the open plains. In the distance, a faint sound reached her ears, the soft rhythm of hooves striking the earth. She paused mid-motion, her head lifting to catch the sound more clearly. Her body stiffened slightly, and her hands stilled over the bundle. The sound was distant, almost lost in the symphony of the lake and forest, but it was enough to stir the instinct that had been honed over years of living in a world that demanded vigilance. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of dust and dry earth from the plains beyond, mingling with the freshness of the lake. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the horizon where the golden light met the edge of the trees. She exhaled slowly, letting the tension ease just a fraction, but her mind remained alert. There was a rhythm to her life here, one dictated by nature's cycles, by the sun and the wind, by the movement of the animals and the whispers of the forest. Yet even in this solitude, she knew the world was never truly still. Something could break the calm at any moment, a rider on horseback, a shadow among the trees, a sudden call for help. And so she remained vigilant, kneeling by the water, washing her belongings with hands both strong and tender, as the lake reflected the fading light and the quiet strength of a woman bound to the land and its ever-present mysteries. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that stretched across the water like fingers reaching from the past into the present. The woman continued her task, serene yet alert, each movement a testament to patience and resilience, a quiet prelude to the events that were about to unfold. The lake remained calm, the air gentle, and the first stars began to twinkle faintly above, heralding the approach of night. The peaceful rhythm of the lake was shattered in an instant. A shadow moved among the trees on the far shore, barely visible at first, blending with the trunks and undergrowth. Then came the sudden crack of a branch under heavy weight, and the woman's heart jumped into her throat. She froze, hands stilling over her small bundle, as her eyes darted toward the source of the noise. From the dense forest emerged a figure on horseback, the rider masked and cloaked, the horse's hooves thundering against the earth like distant drums of warning. Dust and dry leaves erupted in their wake, carried by the wind toward the shore where she knelt. The thief's movements were swift and precise. He spurred the horse forward, and before the woman could react, he had closed half the distance between them. Her belongings, her small treasures washed and cared for only moments ago, were snatched from her hands with a single, expert motion. The pouch and bundle disappeared into the saddlebag strapped across the horse's back. She stumbled backward, caught off balance by shock and fear, her knees sinking into the soft mud at the water's edge. "Stop! Wait!" she cried, her voice cutting through the air like a knife, but the thief paid her no heed. His eyes, hidden behind the mask, gleamed with cold calculation, and the horse answered his commands with practiced obedience. Her chest heaved as she tried to regain composure. The bundle she had cared for, each item a piece of her life and heritage, was gone. She could see the thief now clearly, riding with reckless confidence, his silhouette sharp against the fiery colors of the setting sun. The horse leapt over fallen branches, hooves striking with relentless force. She tried to call for help again, her voice louder, more desperate. "They've taken everything." The words echoed across the lake, bouncing off the water, but no one answered. The solitude she had once cherished now seemed like a trap, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. She scrambled to her feet, instinct taking over. Her eyes scanned the terrain, looking for any path to intercept the thief, but the open plains stretched endlessly before him. The lake's edge offered little protection, it was a place of reflection and calm, not confrontation. Panic clawed at her, but she forced herself to breathe, to think, to act. She bent low, feeling the earth beneath her, imagining the thief's path, and weighing her options. Every muscle in her body tensed, ready to spring into motion, but the thief's advantage was clear. The horse carried him with speed she could not match. The wind carried her cries further now, rippling across the lake's surface. Each shout was a mixture of fear and determination, a plea to anyone who might hear and come to her aid. The thief glanced over his shoulder once, and she thought she saw a flicker of amusement in his hidden eyes. That glance only fueled her resolve, she would not let this violation go unchallenged. Her pulse pounded, her ears rang with the echo of hooves, and her mind raced with strategies and possibilities, each one fading as quickly as it came. Around her, the natural world continued its indifferent rhythm. Birds lifted into the sky with startled calls, their wings slicing through the golden haze. The reeds along the shoreline swayed, bending toward her as if in sympathy, while the water lapped against the mud with gentle insistence, oblivious to the human drama unfolding at its edge. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that stretched across the lake, exaggerating the distance between her and the fleeing thief. Time seemed suspended, every second stretched painfully, each heartbeat amplified in the quiet evening air. Then, as the thief's silhouette began to fade into the horizon, the woman's desperation transformed into determination. She would not remain a passive victim. Her eyes, dark and unwavering, locked onto the path he had taken. The lake, the reeds, the forest, they were her witnesses, her allies in this moment. She would find a way, and she would reclaim what was hers. But first, she had to survive the night, survive the sudden chaos, and summon the courage to act. She clenched her fists, the fading light reflecting off her beads and charms, and whispered to herself a vow of resilience. The attack had begun, and though the thief had taken her belongings, he had not broken her spirit. The woman stood at the edge of the lake, the stolen bundle no longer in her hands, leaving a raw emptiness gnawing at her chest. Her legs trembled, not just from the shock of the theft but from the sudden surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. The cool water lapped at her boots, grounding her in the moment even as panic threatened to consume her. She raised her arms, her voice trembling yet fierce, and cried out, "Help! Cowboy! Save me!" The sound of her voice rolled across the water, carried by the gentle evening wind, and echoed back from the distant treeline, mingling with the calls of startled birds. Her cries were urgent, raw with fear, desperation threading every word. Each repetition of the plea seemed to strengthen her resolve. The act of shouting became a lifeline, a bridge between her and some unseen savior. She scanned the horizon, eyes straining against the fading light, looking for any sign of movement, any flash of hope. The sun had sunk lower now, painting the sky in bruised purples and deep oranges, shadows stretching long and thin across the water. The lake, once a place of tranquility, now mirrored her anxiety, rippling with every gust of wind as if it too sensed the disturbance in the calm. Her breath came in sharp, ragged pulls as she tried to steady herself. She lifted her hands to her face, pressing them briefly against her cheeks as if to remind herself that she was still present, still alive, still capable of action. The emptiness left by the stolen belongings felt like a wound, small but burning, and she gritted her teeth against the sting. The horizon seemed endless, and yet she refused to lower her gaze. Every shadow among the trees, every glint of light on the distant plains, could signal the arrival of help, or the approach of further danger. Her senses were heightened, every sound amplified: the rustle of reeds, the soft slap of water against the shore, the distant cry of an animal in the forest. Time stretched, each moment heavy with anticipation. She felt the weight of the solitude around her, the way the lake seemed to stretch infinitely, the forest standing silent and watchful. Her eyes traced the far edge of the water, imagining the thief on his horse, the stolen bundle in his grasp. She felt anger flare, hot and immediate, mingling with fear. But even amid the turmoil, a spark of hope burned within her. Somewhere out there, across the plains and hills, someone capable of intervening existed. A cowboy, a guardian, someone who could restore what had been taken and bring justice to the unfolding scene. She turned slightly, scanning the treeline with sharper focus. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig sent her heart racing, a mixture of dread and expectation. Her mind raced through possibilities, planning, calculating, hoping. She shouted again, voice louder, more commanding this time, "Cowboy! Please, hurry!" The sound seemed to carry farther now, bouncing off the distant hills and spreading over the open plains. Her hands, trembling, clenched briefly at her sides before falling into the rhythm of the call, each repetition a pulse of determination. The evening air grew cooler, brushing against her skin and carrying with it the scent of wet earth and pine. Mist began to rise from the lake, curling and twisting around her ankles, giving the shore an ethereal quality. Her reflection shimmered in the water, distorted by the ripples, a fleeting image of vulnerability and strength intertwined. She realized that she was no longer just a victim in this moment, she was a beacon, sending a signal into the vastness, challenging fate itself to respond. Minutes stretched into an eternity, yet she did not falter. The cries had become a ritual, a rhythm connecting her desperation to hope, fear to action. Every heartbeat, every gasp of breath, reinforced her presence, her refusal to surrender to the injustice that had struck her. And somewhere, beyond the horizon, the wind carried her voice further, toward the one person who might answer. The lake, the trees, the fading light, they bore witness to her call, the urgent plea that would soon summon a figure across the plains, a lone cowboy riding swiftly to her side. Her gaze remained fixed on the horizon, unwavering, resolute. The thief might have taken her possessions, but he had not taken her spirit. With each shout, each echoing plea, she staked a claim on her survival, her dignity, and her hope. Somewhere in the distance, she knew, a hero would hear. The plains stretched endlessly, bathed in the fading gold and deepening purples of twilight, as the cowboy urged his horse forward, hooves drumming a relentless rhythm against the hard earth. The thief, sensing pursuit, rode with reckless urgency, glancing over his shoulder only once before pushing his mount harder, the stolen bundle jostling in the saddlebag. Dust rose in swirling clouds around both riders, blurring the distance between them in a haze of tension. The cowboy's eyes, sharp and unyielding, never wavered from the fleeing figure. Every movement, every nuance of the thief's posture, was recorded and analyzed in an instant. His mind worked in tandem with the horse beneath him, instincts honed by years of navigating the open, unforgiving plains. The wind tugged at his coat and hat, carrying the faint, urgent echo of the woman's cries across the distance. Each call sharpened his focus, a beacon guiding him forward. The rider leaned low over the horse's neck, minimizing resistance, feeling the animal respond with power and precision, muscles coiling and releasing in perfect synchronization. His lasso, coiled at his side, was ready, but he knew the chase required patience as much as speed. Any sudden move could alert the thief or jeopardize control, and in the open plains, miscalculations were costly. The terrain shifted subtly, rising and falling in gentle undulations, scattered with low shrubs and patches of exposed rock. The thief navigated instinctively, trying to exploit every feature of the land to escape, but the cowboy anticipated each turn, each dip, adjusting his course with calculated ease. He spurred the horse slightly, closing the distance in measured increments, keeping the thief in view while ensuring the safety of both animals. The stolen bundle, glinting faintly in the dying light, seemed to taunt him, a prize that demanded swift recovery but not reckless action. As the chase drew them closer to the lake, the surface of the water reflected the chaos in streaks of gold and violet, rippling under the influence of the wind and the movements of nearby wildlife disturbed by the sudden thunder of hooves. Birds scattered in bursts of winged alarm, their cries mingling with the pounding of hooves and the ragged breathing of the riders. The cowboy's eyes flicked momentarily to the woman's silhouette by the water, her figure tense with worry and hope. That glimpse spurred him forward, strengthening resolve, each stride of the horse a promise of protection, a commitment to right the injustice that had occurred. The thief glanced back, panic flickering across the hidden features of his masked face. The cowboy read the motion instantly, anticipating the desperate arc of a turn or swerve meant to shake pursuers. He nudged his horse to follow the likely path, cutting the distance in calculated bounds. The wind carried the sound of snapping branches, the thump of hoof against earth, and the faint jingle of the stolen charms in the saddlebag. Each auditory cue reinforced his precision, allowing him to close the gap while maintaining control. Finally, the cowboy drew within striking range. He leaned slightly to the side, preparing the lasso with practiced hands, looping it carefully while keeping one hand on the reins. The thief's frantic movements betrayed panic, his horse straining under the sudden pressure of pursuit. A small misstep, and the cowboy would be able to seize control, retrieve the bundle, and neutralize the threat without harm. The plains themselves seemed to hold their breath, every shadow stretched long across the ground, every gust of wind accentuating the suspense. With a final surge, the cowboy swung the lasso, its loop widening in the air before dropping with perfect accuracy over the thief's horse, snagging the saddle. The thief yelped, losing balance as the rope tightened, the stolen bundle shifting dangerously. The cowboy nudged his own mount closer, steadying the rope and applying just enough pressure to halt the thief's escape without causing harm. The thief struggled, but the cowboy's firm grip and calm precision left no room for maneuver. The chase ended not with violence, but with controlled mastery. The cowboy dismounted, approaching the thief with measured steps, eyes steady, revolver holstered but ready if needed. He gestured toward the lake, toward the woman who had called for help, and with a mix of authority and reassurance, he reclaimed the stolen bundle. The woman's relief was immediate, her gratitude shining in her eyes as she stepped forward to retrieve her belongings. The tension of the plains dissolved into the evening air, replaced by the gentle lapping of water and the sigh of the wind through the reeds. The hero had arrived, and the injustice had been undone. The plains stretched wide and silent in the dimming light, save for the pounding of hooves and the desperate cries of the woman echoing across the lake. The thief's horse stumbled over a hidden root, throwing him forward slightly, and the cowboy seized the moment. With expert precision, he swung the lasso, the loop spinning through the air like a coil of destiny before settling tightly around the thief's saddle. The rope snapped taut, pulling the horse off balance just enough to halt its frantic escape without causing injury. The thief yelped, struggling to maintain control, but the cowboy's calm grip and steady eyes left no room for maneuvering. The woman watched from the shoreline, her breath caught in her chest as adrenaline surged through her. The cowboy's movements were precise and purposeful, each action calculated to end the chaos without unnecessary violence. Dust swirled around the trio, rising in a ghostly haze, and the last rays of sun painted the scene in fiery oranges and deep purples, turning the moment into a living painting of tension and relief. She could see the determination in the cowboy's posture, the unwavering focus in his eyes, and she felt a flicker of hope ignite within her chest. The thief's resistance waned as the rope held firm. The cowboy advanced carefully, his footfalls muffled by the loose dirt, his eyes never leaving the masked figure before him. He gestured sharply toward the lake, silently commanding the thief to relinquish the stolen bundle. With a shaky hand, the thief loosened the reins and allowed the pouch and charms to slide from the saddlebag. The items tumbled to the ground with a soft thud, dust rising in little clouds around them. The woman rushed forward, retrieving her belongings with trembling hands, fingers brushing over each piece as if reconnecting with long-lost fragments of her life. The cowboy finally dismounted, standing tall between the thief and the woman. His presence was calm but authoritative, radiating a quiet power that commanded respect. He spoke in a steady voice, firm yet controlled, warning the thief of the consequences should he attempt further mischief. The thief, now fully aware of the inevitability of his capture, sagged with resignation, the fight draining from his body. There was no grand confrontation, no dramatic gunfire, just the quiet resolution of skill, courage, and patience prevailing over reckless malice. The woman knelt briefly to secure her belongings, arranging each piece carefully, her eyes flicking toward the cowboy with gratitude shining brightly. She whispered a quiet thanks, words almost lost in the gentle evening breeze, but the meaning was clear. Her life, her possessions, and her dignity had been restored. The cowboy nodded once in acknowledgement, a subtle gesture that conveyed both humility and shared respect. Around them, the lake reflected the deepening hues of twilight, ripples breaking gently as though applauding the resolution. The reeds swayed softly, the wind carried whispers across the water, and the first stars began to punctuate the darkening sky, heralding a calm that had seemed impossible just moments before. The thief was guided away, carefully restrained by the cowboy, who ensured that justice would be served without unnecessary harm. The woman watched, relief mixing with lingering adrenaline, as the threat was removed from her immediate surroundings. The lake, which had once mirrored fear and uncertainty, now reflected a sense of closure, the water glowing with the faint light of dusk. Her heart slowed, her breath evened, and she finally felt safe in the presence of someone whose courage had bridged the distance between helplessness and security. As the cowboy mounted his horse again, he cast a final glance at the woman, a silent acknowledgement of the bond forged in crisis. The wind carried away the last echoes of the chase, leaving only the soft lap of water against the shore and the whisper of rustling reeds. The plains, once the stage of chaos, returned to their natural rhythm, calm and indifferent yet witness to the courage and determination displayed. The woman secured her bundle, holding it close, and for the first time in the day, allowed herself to exhale fully. She had faced fear, called for help, and been answered. The cowboy's figure receded slowly toward the horizon, a lone protector riding off into the fading light, leaving behind the promise that courage and justice could prevail even in the wildest, most unpredictable of lands. The lake shimmered under the twilight sky, serene once more, its surface reflecting the stars and the soft colors of dusk. The woman, her belongings safe and her spirit intact, looked out across the water, the wind tangling in her hair, a small smile breaking across her face. The events of the evening would linger in memory, but now they were tempered by triumph, hope, and the knowledge that in the vast, untamed plains, courage could come galloping over the horizon when it was needed most.